Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, I'll be showing you how to make this pencil turtleneck dress with circle sleeves that you can see right here. If this is something you're interested in, you definitely want to stick around. To my new subscribers, you're welcome on board. Thank you for joining. To my existing subscribers, I love you guys so much. Thank you for sticking by me. Do not forget to subscribe. Do not forget to leave a comment and also turn on your notification bell so you get notified when I post new videos like this. Without wasting your time, let's get right into the video. I'm going to be cutting the lower bodice first, which is the skirt part, and as you can see, I have my fabric on fold already into two. So I'm going to go ahead to draw a starting line, which is going to serve as the waistline from which all other measurements would be taken from lengthwise. Now on that waistline, I'm going to leave out the half bodice measurement, which is 16 inches. So I'm going to place the 16-inch point on the waistline and then proceed to mark the full length of the dress. On the thumbnail on the intro video, you could see that the inspiration was quite short, but I was making it for my little sister and she was going to be wearing it to church, so we had to add a little length to it. So if you want it shorter, you could reduce. You know what to do moving forward. Okay, so after marking the full length of the dress using her measurement, I went ahead to add 2 inches allowance to the length. Now I'm going to mark the waist to hip measurement. Afterwards, I'm going to roll a line across the marked points and label it the hip. Next, I'm going to mark the knee measurement, roll a line across as well, and label it. Now you can see that we have the waist, the hip, the knee, and the full length already marked out. Moving forward now, we're going to mark the circumference of each point divided by 4. Now on the waistline, I'm going to mark the round waist measurement divided by 4, and I'll be adding 1 inch for that allowance and also 1 inch as my sewing allowance. On the hip line, I'm going to mark the round hip measurement divided by 4, and I'll be adding 1 inch sewing allowance as well. For the knee line, I'm going to subtract 1 inch from what I had marked on the hip line, and then I'll also add my 1 inch sewing allowance, and that measurement is what I'm also going to put at the hem of the dress. Afterwards, I'm going to use my curve ruler to roll out lines on the necessary marked points. Now to get the dart measurement, I'm going to use the nipple to nipple measurement divided by 2, and we're going to mark that from the center front. Afterwards, we're going to mark the dart length, and I'm going to be using 3 inches. Now on both sides of the dart width, I'm going to mark ½ inch and then use my ruler to draw out the dart leg just as you can see. Afterwards, I'm going to mark 1 inch below the waistline from the center front in order to make a slope, just to avoid any excessive bulginess or bulkiness that would be having in the front part of the dress. After I'm done marking that out, I'm just going to connect it to the side front just as you see. So we're going to be having a slant line. This is basically all for the front piece of the lower bodice, so I'm going to go ahead now to cut it out. Now I'm going to go ahead to make a notch where I have the dart leg and move on to cutting out the back piece. So for the back, I went ahead to fold my fabric into two again, leaving out a space at the folded edge, which is going to serve as the center back, and that is going to be the zipper allowance, and I left 1 inch. I'm marking a straight line to fill in for the 1 inch that I had cut out from the front waistline to give it the slope, because the back is not going to have a slanted waistline. Afterwards, I'm just going to trim out following the front pattern. So we're going to keep this aside and move on to cutting the upper bodice. As you can see, I've put on fold the piece of fabric I'll be using for the upper bodice. Now the next thing I'm going to do is mark the shoulder measurements divided by 2, and then on that point I'm going to mark 1 inch below, which we're going to use for the shoulder slope. And from that point where I marked the 1 inch, I'm just going to mark the armhole measurements. And for that, I've said it in various videos on this channel that there is a calculation for armhole measurement, which is your bust measurement divided by 6 plus 1.5. Afterwards, I'm just going to roll a line on the marked point, so that is going to become the chest line. Next, moving my tape back to the starting line, I'm going to mark out the bust length and the waist length. The waist length of this is 16 inches. I'm going to be adding 1 inch for allowance, ½ inch to join the upper bodice to the lower bodice, and another ½ inch to join the shoulders. So I'm going to be marking 17 inches. Afterwards, I'm going to proceed to roll out lines on the marked points. Now on the chest line, I'm just going to remark the shoulder measurement divided by 2 and connect it to the top just to have a straight line. And then I'm going to mark the round bust measurement divided by 4, and I'll be adding 1 inch sewing allowance. On the waistline as well, I'm going to divide the round waist measurement by 4, mark that out, add 1 inch for that allowance and 1 inch sewing allowance, and I'm just going to use my ruler to connect all these points. Now to the armhole, I'm going to divide what I have from the shoulder slope mark to the chest line, mark out the midpoint, and then go inwards by 0.5 inch, just as you can see, and then proceed to draw out the armhole curve. Afterwards, I'm just going to go ahead to mark the round neck measurement. For this, the next tutorial that will be coming up after the making of this dress is how to make a perfect turtleneck that would not gape. So I'm going to give more in-depth tutorial on what measurements I used for the round neck. So stay tuned and turn on your notification bell. Next, I'm just going to connect the neck width to the 1 inch that we had dropped for the shoulder slope, making a slant line, and that is all for the front part of this bodice. I'm just going to proceed to cut it out. Now for the dart, I'm going to mark the nipple to nipple measurements divided by 2 from the center front, and also mark ½ inch on both sides. And then for the length, I'm going to come down by 1 inch from the bust line, and that is how long the dart is going to be. Afterwards, I'm going to proceed to make a notch. Now for the back of the upper bodice, I've gone ahead to fold the fabric into 2, and then I'll just place the front on it. Okay, you can see that there is an allowance at the center front and the center back, which is the folded edge, and it is going to be the zipper allowance. I left 1 inch for that. So the next thing I'm going to do now is mark out the neck width and the neck depth, then proceed to use my ruler to draw out the neck curve. After rolling out the neck curve, the next thing I'm going to do is extend the chest line. Reason being that I don't want the front armhole and the back armhole to be the same. I like the front armhole being deeper than the back. Now I'm going to cut out following the front pattern. I'm also going to make a notch where we have the darts for the front because it's going to be the same. I'm also going to open up the zipper allowance. Remember, it's on fold and we need it in 2 pieces, so I'm going to open that up, and then when we get to the armhole area, I'm going to remark that on the back. Remember, we went inwards for the front by 0.5 inch. For the back, I'm going to go inwards by 0.25 inch. That means we've reduced the armhole for the back. So that's basically what I'm going to do, and we are done with the back bodice. I'm done cutting, and as you can see, the front armhole is deeper than that of the back. So I'm going to go ahead now to cut lining pieces for this upper bodice as well as the lower bodice, and then I'll show you how to join the pieces together. So here is the lower bodice. You can see that I have the lining piece and the main fabric. So I'm going to open up the front piece and place the lining to the main fabric, right sides facing each other. We're going to head over to the sewing machine and we're going to stitch down the hem and the sides. Okay, just the hem and the sides. We're not stitching the waistline. Okay, you can stitch it with 1/2 inch or even as tiny as 1/4 inch, depending on the sewing allowance that you kept. Okay, and for the back as well. So we're going to open them up, place them right sides facing each other, lining to main fabric. We're going to stitch the hem and we're going to stitch the side and the zipper allowance. Remember, we are not stitching the waist of any of this. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead to do that, press it down with my iron and come back to show you the next step. As you can see, I have sewn this and ironed as well, so I'm going to keep this aside and move on to the upper bodice. Now for the front piece, we're going to place it right sides facing each other, main fabric to lining, just as we did earlier, and we're going to sew the sides. After sewing the sides, I'm going to flip this to the right side and then stitch the neckline. Okay, we're not stitching from the inside and then turn where the allowance goes inside. We're stitching on the right side, the main fabric and the lining together, just 1 stitch round. Okay, and for the back piece as well, we're going to stitch the sides, the zipper allowance, flip it to the right side and then hold it down with a stitch at the neck as well. I'm gonna head to sew. I have ironed as well, and this is what we have here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to hold the darts on the upper bodice and the lower bodice. Okay, so if you remember, we made a notch to help us know where our dart is supposed to be. So I'm just going to go ahead to hold that. After holding the darts, I'm going to place the front, upper and lower bodies right sides facing each other and hold it at the waistline. We're going to stitch it down with 1/2 inch. I'm going to do same to the back as well. For each piece, I'm going to hold it at the waistline with 1/2 inch. And then for the back, after that, I'm going to stitch down the zipper allowance all the way to the hem. Okay, so when I'm done doing all of this, I'm going to press it down with my iron and then come back to show you what next to do. This is what it looks like after I was done sewing and ironing. Now I'm going to pin the front and back together and then use the body measurements to shape it all the way down, just as you can see me do. This is a lot easier. It's easier to work on if at all you put it on or the person you're making it for puts it on and there is some sort of readjustment that you need to do. You can just run it through instead of the other process. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead now to my machine and do this. As you can see, the dress is coming out nice bit by bit. So now let's move on to joining the shoulders. So I'm going to pick each piece, the front and the back. Remember, we have main fabric lining, which means we have 4 pieces, right? So I'm going to take the front and the lining of the back. Okay, that is me holding 3 pieces, and then I'm going to take the main fabric of the back piece and turn it over, like flip it to cover up the front piece. I don't know if that makes sense, but hope you're watching what I'm doing. And then I'm going to secure that with my pin. So I'm going to explain using the second side of the shoulder just so you get it right again. So like I said, we have 4 pieces of fabric: main fabric, lining, main fabric. Now we're going to take 3 pieces, which is the front and the lining piece of the back. Then take the main fabric of the back and flip it over to cover up the front. Okay, and then use the pin to secure it in place. Head over to the machine and stitch down with 1/2 inch. This way your sewing allowances all goes inside. It gives a neat finish. Okay, that's why I like to stitch my shoulders down like this. So I'm going to go ahead to do that now, and we can move on to the next. After that, I went ahead to open up the slit at the back, which is about 15 inches long, and I'm going to use my hemming gum to hold it in place, just as you can see, so it doesn't push out when she's walking. Here is the shoulder as well. After stitching and ironing, you can see the neat finish. Okay, now the next thing we're going to do is to work on the sleeve. For the sleeves, I'm going to be posting a tutorial for that separately. It will come right after the tutorial of this dress. It's going to be an in-depth tutorial. I did not want to mix everything up, so I had to put it in parts. So I'm going to show you in that tutorial how I came about the measurements and the cutting of these circle sleeves. Okay, so turn on your notification bell so you do not miss out. Alright, so you can see that I'm just pinning this to the armhole of the dress. We're going to go to the machine, stitch all round with 1/2 inch, and I'm going to do same to the other side. Now the next thing to do is to attach the collar, and this would have a separate tutorial as well, which will come up after that of the making of this dress, which is going to show you how to get the accurate and perfect turtleneck, which will not gape. You could see on the intro video how the turtleneck sat perfectly on the girl's neck, for which I made this outfit for. So I'm sure you definitely do not want to miss out on that. Afterwards, I'm just going to attach my zipper, and that brings us to the end of this tutorial. So like I said earlier, the tutorial for the sleeves and the collar will be posted right after this tutorial. Please do not forget to turn on your notification bell so you don't miss out on those ones as well. I did not want to make all of them into one video. I wanted to give you all the necessary explanation, take my time to explain accurate measurements, perfect guidelines. For this one, like I said, this is the end. You can see the end result already. You already even saw it from the beginning, and I am sure that you enjoyed every bit of it. So please do not forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, please do well to drop it in the comment section. I'll be more than happy to give answers to your questions as usual. Until next time, this is goodbye from me.